A helmet? Oh, welcome back to Otaku no Video. As always, thank you very much for joining me, where I'm here to review Super Robot Wars OG The Inspector, a 26, I believe, episode anime series released last year in Japan and over here in America. This is based on the Super Robot Wars, or Super Robot Tyson, video games, which, if you're not familiar, are games in which a whole bunch of actual licensed giant robots all get warped into the same universe and all fight each other. So you'll get Evangelions versus Gymellos from Escaflowne versus Gundams versus Valkyries versus all that, and all the characters too. Now, incorporating all those into an actual anime series would be logistically a nightmare for various reasons. So this series focuses on the original characters which show up in those in those games, which the plots generally tend to follow. And there are a lot of them, just be aware. Now, this is very much a celebration of giant robots. It's one of the reasons I enjoyed it so much. And it's a celebration of both sides of mecha, real robots and super robots, despite the title. Real robots are kind of like Gundam. They're more realistic, more militaristic generally, in which the mecha are designed war machines. Whereas in the super robot genre, it's a little more loose, a little more fun, a little more over the top. Sometimes a lot more over the top. Tenka Toppen Gurren Lagann is a classic example of a super robot series. Now, this universe and setting for this series is structured a bit more like a typical Gundam series, for example. There are several different sides, alliances shift. A side will start out good and then end up switching sides and becoming evil, that kind of stuff. And there are a lot of pilots bouncing off each other and rivalries and things like that. And it's in a more militaristic world, which is actually good because it allows the super robot stuff to kind of leap in and kind of be kind of layered on top of the militaristic stuff, if you will. So the world gets to be a little bit more sensible than it would be in a super robot series, so to speak. Now, this is a series in which, like, every mecha ever has all been smashed together into one universe. So you get mecha from, or again, thinly veiled versions of mecha from Gundam, Macross, Escaflowne, Voltron, ridiculous over-the-top super robot shows, Gao Gaigar type mecha. You name it, it's in here. And that, again, it's one of the really fun things, is you get to see all these things all thrown together, all fighting against each other, basically. It's incredibly fun for that, but it's meant to be fun and not a carefully constructed, rigorously internally logical world. There's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of, crazy mecha being developed, and that's just kind of the way the world is. Like I said, they try to make it a bit more realistic than it would be in like a Go Nagai style series. But just be aware that this has a lot going on. Now, about those characters, they are quite distinctive, and for a series to have several dozen named pilot characters that you follow throughout the series, that's no easy feat. However, almost all of them get at most one or two scenes of character development. There's just not much time for them. Typically, you'll be introduced to a character. Within an episode or two, they'll get their big character moment, and then they become one of the other characters. And you don't really get much more out of them. A few characters, however, do get more character development. We do focus on them throughout the course of the series. So that's very good. But this is very much an ensemble story. It's about this large cast of characters all dealing with these various problems. That said, there are some very strong character moments. And I don't want to make you feel like this is just about a bunch of different people. There are some strong emotional moments and some sequences that I can remember very clearly that really stand out in my memory. This series is all about feeling and emotion and making you feel things and making the character feel things. It's very visceral in that way. One fun thing about the characters is that pretty much every voice actor in this also voice acted in a previous mecha series. So I had a lot of fun going back to the encyclopedia and bouncing through and seeing, oh, this person played that guy in Zeta Gundam, or this girl in original Macross, or whatever. There's just a huge range of voices from a huge range of series. And they don't sound like those characters, by the way. But that's a lot of fun. Well, some of them kind of do. But Moving on to the art side, the direction is pretty melodramatic. Again, this is all about feeling. The director, which we'll get to in a second, favors close-ups, which give you a lot of emotional intensity as opposed to big tableaus. The editing is pretty unremarkable. The action, however, is fairly fast and it is intense. Again, there's a lot going on, and you'll get fights between a lot of different characters all going back and forth. There were some times where I felt lost in terms of what was going on and who was fighting who and who was winning and who was losing. I think that's partly intentional, and I don't think there's any way of getting around it. That's just kind of what you're going to have in a series like this that is so big and so broad and has so many different characters. The animation itself is pretty high budget by recent standards, although animation budgets seem to be getting higher and higher recently. But it's certainly no slouch. There are a few animation slumps, but the animation is certainly, it works all the way throughout. It's just one of those things where some of the episodes have more scenes of characters standing around talking than other episodes do, I'll put it that way. So I never felt cheated, but it does get noticeably cheaper at times. The art itself is colorful. It's not quite kindergarten, primary color colorful, but it's a bright show. And there's a lot of color, a lot of stuff going on, which is important actually. With this many mecha and these many pilot characters, you need distinctive uniforms and very distinctive mecha designs, and part of that comes down to color. Now, in terms of anime cliches and the use of both story cliches and visual, anime cliches, obviously the story has a lot of mecha cliches, but that's kind of the point. The art has some anime cliches. Again, it's kind of straddling a fine line where it's trying to be a bit more realistic than a Super Robot show would be, but at the same time, it's a celebration of mecha and anime in general. So you'll see some veins popping out of characters' heads and things like that now and again. I mean, it is trying to be fun. It is fun. And so there are a lot of those anime cliches, but they are kind of what you'd expect. And it's never overbearing, and it's not ridiculous. Characters don't bounce into chibi form every 5 minutes, for example. Now, Super Robot Wars OG The Inspector is directed by Masami Obari, who has a bit of a reputation. He's done a lot of mecha series, and his female characters tend to be well blessed, shall we put it that way, and sometimes to a ridiculous degree. Now, for example, he did Gravion and Gravion Zwei. Those are more parodies of mecha series. This is more a celebration of mecha series. So it's, there are some characters with very large boobs in The Inspector, but they're there because they're always characters with large breasts, and it's part of the fun. I never felt like that was completely ridiculous. There were obviously scenes of Gynax bounce and things like that. Again, they're celebrating all these various aspects of mecha series and anime series. But it's not completely to the point of self-parody, if you will, which, again, I liked. One final thing, the music. Perfect, big, bold, brassy, huge, lots of, dramatic music, right on the nose. As you can tell, I had fun with this series, but as to kind of the review portion, it all comes down to expectations, as with so many things. If you come into this expecting sort of a fully formed mecha series where you're going to be concentrating on certain characters, that ain't what this is. This is an ensemble story about a very huge, a ridiculously huge plot line and storyline involving a lot of different characters, and it's celebrating mecha in its most melodramatic and its most silly way, in a lot of ways, but in a way that really respects it, and it really knows how to have fun and really knows how to achieve those goals that mecha has, of making you really feel for the characters, feel for what they're going through, have an actual plot that does move to a full-scale conclusion, and works, for lack of a better word. All the parts that need to be there to make a mecha series are there. They all execute, and you get where a series like this tends to end up. And it's a fun roller coaster ride the whole way through, if I may borrow a very tired reviewing cliche. So that's Super Robot Wars OG The Inspector. If you want to watch it, head over to streamsuki.com, which is an index of hundreds of free legal anime streams. It should still be available there, hopefully. And if not, it'll try to find it for you. And if you want to talk about series like this, please stop by otakunovideo.net, my website, where you can talk about this and lots of other interesting anime. So thanks for watching. Until next time, see you, Space Cowboy.